What's going on, everybody? It's me, RDV. I'm here leading us off right now while waiting for Rob to get back, doing what he's doing. Just want to talk about this movie today. If anybody's seen it in the comments, and let us know what your take of it is. But for me, going into this, Rob and I on Tuesday reviewed the first movie, 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later is a phenomenal movie. And I got to say, going into this, after watching 28 Days Later, it really made an impact on how much I liked or disliked this movie. What's up, Rob?
Hey, RDV. It's raining here in Central Florida, the Extreme Studios. I'm glad my dogs are no longer bugging me to go out and drop a doozy. But speaking of 28 Days Later, I got to tell you, I just got done watching it before I went on live earlier with Columbo tonight.
For the second time in a week? Wow.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. When you and I did the first movie and reviewed that, obviously what sticks out in your mind is the zombies running and chasing. It's that great car scene in the middle and all that in the tunnel.
It's more so the opening, the first 30 minutes.
Yes. But then it turns into something else. And this is what Danny Boyle does. He did it with I think he did The Beach and some others. This movie, I got to say, is very beautiful. The zombies are there, but it has nothing to do with zombies. It really is about certain things or whatever, too. And I don't know how much you just mentioned with that, too. But it's an interesting film.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't even call these zombies. It's not a zombie infection. It's just basically rabies, what they have. These people have.
Right.
Virus.
The feral kind.
Honestly, dude, I was just getting into this, talking about it, and how watching the first movie really made an impact of how, and for watching this, and for me, it was kind of a negative because I really love the first movie. Going to this, we're led to believe it's going to be Jason Taylor or Taylor. Is it
Aaron
Taylor Johnson? Yeah, that's what it is. I can never. He's freaking three names. Going into that, it's gonna be him and it's gonna be his son. I'm like, okay, so it's gonna be like The Road. Them going into the mainland, doing this.
Right.
But we only get a little bit of that because, and even before we get to that part, there's a little kid named Jimmy. They're in the initial outbreak.
Little Jimmy
was sitting down with all his friends stuff. They were sitting there watching TV or watching Teletubbies when, suddenly, their house gets attacked by the people that are infected. He's the only one survivor to get out of there. He runs to his father, who's a priest. He runs in there, and his father at this point is pretty much thinking this is Judgment Day, so he's just lost it. And allows the infected to come out and go after him. He hides in a little coffin, and that's kind of like the snippet we get of this. And then it just shifts to Aaron Taylor Johnson and his kid, and we learn through them that basically it's the kid's he's 12 years old. His mom is sick. They don't know why, but she's got this headache. She's in bedridden and stuff. Him and his dad are gonna go out. It's his first time going out to the mainland. They live in this little island. I forget what it's actually a real place actually in Britain.
Yes.
Where it's secluded, and for 4 hours it's open because you're able to walk through because there's low tide. Otherwise, high tide makes it impossible. You'll have swept out current past that. And even the father even mentions this. So we have to wait. And they go out there, and like it's his rite of passage. He wants to do this. The kid ends up panicking, but because for whatever reason he doesn't want to make his son be like a wimp. When they get back after hiding in this little hut there, they make it back, and they have this big celebration. Everybody's drunk, and then they're saying like, "Oh yeah, you see my boy? My boy was killing everybody, all the infected and stuff. One here, one there." And this leads to basically where the kid's like drinking, and his underage drinking. And he's like, he goes outside to puke, sees his dad out there with some other woman. It's not his mom, so he finds out his dad's cheating on his mom. And this kind of where the movie started to realize, oh my gosh, this movie is not about Aaron Taylor Johnson whatsoever.
Yep.
It's about this little Alfie kid. And I'm that's where it kind of was like, oh no, I don't want this, and that's what we're dragged into for this. We haven't really talked about how they're infected, but they're basically naked individuals running around with their dicks flopping. There's a lot of that in this movie. So
untrimmed,
unkempt.
I meant the hair. I didn't mean whether they're circumcised or not for you non-Catholics out there. Clean, natural, whatever you want to call it.
So going into this, it got the setup. We know about this little kid Jimmy who hid in a little coffin while his dad's being eaten, inside the church stuff. Like we're like, hey, he's like, he's kind of this. We'll push him to this side. for the movie. And this story is going to be about this kid taking his sick mother. He doesn't, he thinks she's dying, whatever, because they're out there. They saw another flame while they're up on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad had no idea who it was. He learns from another guy that turns out there's a Ralph Fiennes, his character, who is a doctor, or he was 30 years ago or 20 years ago. And they said he's crazy. And he figures he'll know what's wrong with my mom. So he takes his mom out on this journey. And this is where you're stretching your logic. This would never work and everything.
I love it.
Oh, and so as they go on, obviously they hide in this little thing in there, and he falls asleep as this little bloater thing, what he killed earlier with his dad, another one, comes up to Sule's, and then, and it spits it out. He's going to attack him. He wakes up, it's dead over there. Turns out his mom, while he's sleeping, bashed the thing's skull in, and he wakes up. He has no idea what it is. She keeps quiet about it. Then also we see these not paratroopers, but these troopers on a boat. These Navy from Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
They're on this raft. Apparently their ship ran aground, and they were basically got into the beach. They're going to make it through. They're being chased by these infected, and they get in this little tunnel, and it's dark. You get the gunfight here. I really like this scene. Alpha grabs one of the guys, and then he sees him pulls his head off, and you see the vertebrae and everything. Spine comes out.
I wasn't expecting that. The fact that they called him an alpha because of different types of zombies. I'm like, are they doing something different here? Because
they seemed a little bit more cognitive,
Yes.
Less ragey, and so we're led to believe in 20 years they've kind of evolved. There's because you see him scourging around and walking around, and there's always an alpha, and we even come across a pregnant one who seems kind of docile a little bit, where he's with his mom, and they're with the one Swedish soldier, Eric, and they're walking, and his mom, also she goes front, she finds this train that, been caught on a landslide. Inside there's a woman screaming. It's the pregnant infected. And for a minute, she lets you touch his hands with the air, and it's calm, and it's which is really weird. They've never had before. It's usually they're angry and try to attack you. She delivers the baby, and then as soon, he has the boy, hey, cut the umbilical cord, so I can know this up. And then Eric comes in there and then shoots it because he wants to shoot the baby, but before he can, Alpha pulls him up and kills him too. So then we got the mom, this newborn baby, which doesn't seem to have any affected at all. No, the eyes are normal, and young I forgot what his name is, but I call him Alfie because that's what the name of the actual kid, his name is Alfie Williams, is the actor.
Mm-hmm.
They run into the doctor, who shoots the alpha, who's chasing behind him with his
blowgun,
with his dick flopping,
morphine.
And we get this we're led into where we see tons and tons of skulls, kind of like the French had the catacombs. Remember they used the and this was so creepy. I was just I wouldn't trust this guy at all, doctor, nothing, But overall, I said, I know I'm going quickly through the movie, but there isn't much to this movie, You're
right.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a world building, but a little bit of sense. We get introduced to this young kid Jimmy here, and then we get this new kid, his mom, his story and everything. We learn about the doctor. We learn more about this the infected and everything, and basically ends up with just basically you're gonna have Alfie by himself because he learns his mom has cancer. That's what the doctor says, So he euthanizes her, gives her his skull, her skull. And so he can basically go put out, he climbs, this is where you can see the trailer, he's climbing the top and he's putting the skull on the very top. And he aims it towards the sunset so she can watch it, even her death, whatever, meaning. But then as they get ready, he's got the baby. He has to get the baby back to the village. As they're walking, the alpha comes, so they quick hide inside it. It looks like a sewer grate.
Yep. And
he bolts it in. Alpha's getting ready to attack him, but the kid reaches in, grabs a dart, and hits him in the arm. And then he goes home, delivers the baby with a note telling his father, "Hey, I can't come back. Whatever. I'll see you whenever." And we see Erin Taylor-Johnson running, but it's too late. The high tides come back in, so he can't leave the encampment. And then we're flash forward to 28 days later.
Yes.
You got little Alfie's on the road, and he's sitting there. He's cooking some fish, whatever. And then we see it around the round. It's one of those bends when the road, and you see they're coming around. You see the infected start chasing him. One stops for his food, bastard.
Fish. So that applies that they can smell fish because the zombie knows to take the fish and just starts eating it.
I figured they can just see light and everything. Remember he had the light in the first movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, any noise, whatever. And so he runs away and he gets caught. There's a rock slide there in the middle of the road. He can't get across. And who do we see at the end here? We see a bunch of people.
A bunch of parkour athletes in tracksuits, sir, with weapons.
And they're all named Jimmy because the main leader is the boy from the beginning, Jimmy. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it was just a weird ending. I know it's supposed to be part of a trilogy.
Yes.
And even though I didn't like as much as a lot of people, this movie was a hit. Going with its little 60 million, it walked away with 103.1 million so far at box office. So
I think that if I recall correctly, I mentioned something in the first film.
It's only been out for a
Daniel
week.
Boyle's not really a Christian person. Nothing wrong with that. It's his choice, right? So I don't know if he's agnostic, if he's atheist. I don't really know. But what I do know that is, like, I think he did The Beach and some other stuff we've talked about, is that it's very clear that early on in the first movie and this movie, because we're ignoring the second and third, that he wants the audience to know right off the bat that religion has nothing to do with it. You're on your own. This is a coming of age story of a kid, and everything's symbolic. You know, he meets the wise old sage that helps him out here, which is supposed to be the mad whatever. He has to become the father figure in his own household. His father is lying to him about what's going on, and then to your point, when you find out it's about the boy and not him, you're like, are they swerving me? What the hell are they trying to do? So, and then the zombies are done well, but it's not about that. It really isn't. It's all about him becoming a man, taking care of his mom, his mom having cancer, him going through life, and then all that too. So they're definitely, I agree with you. The whole second and third act is world building for the next two.
Yes. And the Jimmies are based off Jimmy Savile, Top of the Pop, you know. So they're all based off his kind of characters. They all dress as everybody like him with the track suits, you know. They look like they just walked out of a Russian, like a bar.
I love it. The tracksuit look. It's timeless.
Yeah. And I'm like, is this a nod to Lock, Stock, Smoking 2 Barrels? You know.
Well, I was going to ask you with it. When I see a zombie film, I don't know how much we're supposed to know or care about the zombies, but what I did think, based on how effective the opening is, which reminded me of the was it the 2004 or 5 one where they're in the shopping mall? That one, Day of the Dead or whatever.
Yeah.
The opening one with the nurse and how there's a zoom away from the neighborhood. This film has got so many beautiful shots, and it's an understated music thing to it, where I felt like when they're walking along the fields and he's got his mom with it and she's delirious or whatever like that you felt like trouble could come out of any corner. So it was effectively done where you don't have to see a lot of them, but enough where you go, shit, kid, you can't be having her sleeping on the floor even though you're guarding the one entrance. And then, of course, you see the one fat one jogging up. This is all symbolic stuff. It's got nothing to do with kill counts or creative ways to kill something or battles. None of that stuff.
Yeah, so a little more background about this thing, the plot. And so it's 20 years later, and it's basically the rage virus has been eradicated from basically most of Europe. But Great Britain is in quarantine, and anyone who tries to leave will be killed by the surrounding navies.
Yep, and that's why the one team from Finland or whatever, Sweden, was boating around it because they had the perimeter.
Yep. Yeah, so his name is Spike. That's what his name is. Character's name is Spike in this. But so the beginning of this movie, just like we get these shots of Britain with some old lady narration over it, and we're seeing the infected incorporated in what could have been like many years prior to this. It's like, what? I didn't understand that. Did you understand that when they're showing like World War II and then World War I, they're fighting soldiers fighting against the infected armies. Then they had the knights going against the infected zombies. Are they trying to imply that this rage virus has been around before 28 days later?
That's kind of, I think, and this is where I was saying about Danny Boyle. There's some alternative ideas and theories out there about big concepts that we just accept. Like some people think there's no such thing as actual cancer cells. It's something different. And, it goes into when it comes to like psychology of like mass things, like are these really zombies, or are they just humans that haven't evolved? And what he's really talking about is evolution here. You know what I'm saying? Get rid of the religion. What do you need to do to evolve and all that? Because again, they don't spend a lot of time on it. I think it's intentionally left where you're going to fill in the blanks. And so I definitely agree with you. I don't think it's fleshed out intentionally well enough, which we might get more of in the next two films, because I do feel like they're building up. So I believe he's got an answer in mind. He's just not telling us, or he's trying to make us figure it out on our own while we're watching it. We've
been taught about the Dark Ages or history class and all that stuff, in the Brinzo. But the infection, the plague and all that stuff in this fictional world, maybe this virus, it existed before, during the dark era. Because we see the guy in the village teaching him how to use bow and arrows, and they're shooting the dummies.
Return to simplicity, as it were, the way it used to be.
The medieval time, because they don't have bullets, they only have bow and arrows, and that's what they use. And you guys said the head, heart, or the neck, a little blood spurts out because that kills them. The next two movies. Cillian Murphy is supposed to reprise his role in the second act, I guess, or somewhere in the second movie. I was really glad that he wasn't the skinny zombie that got up in the middle of the field, because it really looked like him.
Yep.
But obviously he's going to be a much older person than he was in the first one. It's been 28 years for them, but for us, it's only been 23.
Yeah, it's interesting because. The film, like I say, I think it's just like an allegory. I think what he's doing is he's setting up certain scenes. I don't think it's as hardcore Christian as, like, say, Lord of the Rings. A lot of people like to think is. There's certain things that are, but then they disguise it without telling you. I think that's part of the story behind it. And it was interesting because, again, going back to the first movie, one of the things that aggravated me about the first movie was that watching it, I clearly remember there's some really great scenes, like when he's walking across where MI6 is and the bridge there, and
where you can see all the scenery.
But I always felt like there was never a great print of the movie, because even if you get a really great copy or like that, it seems
he purposely did it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted that sharper. I wanted that sharpness, right? That's just me. I wanted to see it because
I think he did it to make it look like the 70s George Romero stuff.
I agree with you. And without looking that up or knowing that, that seems appropriate.
Yeah.
Here, though, I think this is the same movie but done better, even though it's more philosophical, more mental in your head. Because I clearly saw it's a story about what does somebody need to do to survive, and it's a boy's struggle, and it's the classic one of your roles in your family. Well, the father maybe wasn't holding up to his end of the bargain, so it's on him. The mother's incapacitated, and she's the matriarch, right? So how does this boy going to learn? Well, learn by doing, right? And he gets sent out on an adventure. I love that stuff.
What would have made this so much better if they would have went with the whole point where his dad was cheating on his mom, and could have had his dad die while they're out there, and knowing, because they tell you before they leave, they look to someone's like, if you guys don't come back, we ain't letting you in,
But I hear you, and that's certainly a way it can go. We don't know how it's going to go, but what the boy does, which I think is great, is because there's a part of the back of your brain, at least for me, when I'm watching this, when they're going through the whole philosophical skull effigies and all that kind of stuff there too.
Yeah.
Basically the story that the father told his son wasn't true, and that's what parents do. They tell you stories to keep you in line. That's how tales get told, and you keep to manipulate kids and keep them in line. And they basically said, and they show you the visual. And it's fucking grim, where they basically say he took all the friggin' bodies out there, lined them up perfectly, and then burned them all. And you're like, yeah, he really does. And he kept the skulls, and they actually show him and involve the boy in the ritual of taking the skull, reducing all the body, burning it, and then washing the flesh off of it, bleaching it, and putting it up on the thing. So you're like, this guy's not there, but he was very nice to the boy. He brought the boy along. I got to be blunt. This whole euthanasia kind of thing or whatever like that, with the mom having cancer, she's not going to have much to go. He checked her lymph nodes and stuff, and he made him go through it. Something that might upset some people. It's kind of disturbing, but it's one of those movies where you just, if you go into it thinking it's going to be something else and you get this, I'm wondering if you're going to be disappointed. I thought the strongest part was him leaving the baby for his dad, because it's basically saying, hey, fuck you, Dad. I'm a man now. And the women ran and grabbed the baby because they know what they need. So his father's even more impotent right now, literally and figuratively, because his son's now a man. The women in there are taking care of it, and he left the baby to go seek his own fortune.
Yeah,
He didn't come
I
back.
like that in the note. He basically named the
Named
baby
it after his mom.
Yeah,
Ilsa, what, right?
Yeah, Ilsa, whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Honestly, I would have loved it more if it would have been the cancer thing, or maybe his mom did have cancer, but his dad, they tell him there's nothing we can do about it. So when they go on hunting next time, he decides, well, I'm going to go find the doctor by myself and bring him back.
Right.
That would have been much more entertaining with this, and him and had the dad had to go after him while he try to catch up with him, them protecting each other instead of like the dysfunctional family. Oh, the dad's an asshole, and like I'm sick of those movies like that.
No, you're right, because you mentioned at the beginning here about Aaron Taylor Johnson figuring he would be a central figure to this movie.
Yeah.
And he's not. So it's kind of like a gotcha, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. I totally agree with you. You and I despise the fact that majority of time fathers are considered just not even relevant at all.
It's the mom, and the dads are deadbeats, yeah.
Right. And I would argue that Aaron's character didn't necessarily do anything wrong. But what more could he do? And I'm not.
We don't know how many times he cheated on her. He could have been that one time right there. He was drunk. And maybe because you did see him, he was kind of like didn't know how to deal with the situation because he couldn't help her, and he's like he has a kid, and he's trying to keep the kid from going up there.
He's caring for her, and she's sick and all that. He's trying to run this place, and they don't know what's going on in the outside world. So, it's hopefully that'll get resolved a little bit more clearer and well defined in the second and or third movie. Because I agree with you. I think there's certain scenes that stick out. You mentioned last time about when Cillian Murphy's character is getting ready to get whacked with the other two people, and through an act of fate that kind of got through the guys that were going to kill him, and they see the plane with the trails and all that, so they know there are people out there. There's so many great looking individual scenes in here.
One of the things we did learn though from the doctor is useful to him is that the virus is not like iodine. So that could be a lead to them actually, taking the fight in the next movie against the infected. If the kid, or anyone else, maybe the Jimmies know this too. Who knows? He could mention something because, like, that's how they keep them.
In the movie, why do they get so fat?
Well, they're eating animals. Remember, they're pulling. They took the duck, or not sorry, the duck, but the buck. They ripped its head off, and they were feeding on the corpse. And then they, because remember they climbed the trees, they hide in the trees and stuff. But I'm just glad it wasn't I Am Legend where they all hide, in like the dark cave stuff.
Right.
I like the fact that they were just like, they're still human beings, and some of the ones that are skinny are the ones that are probably starving to death. And that's all. Because they remember they hunted packs, and the alpha, commands them.
There is one funny scene in here though, and it's when the Swedish guy kind of somehow hooks up with them a little bit, and he's like,
"Oh, the cell phone."
Yeah, the cell phone where he's talking about, I only got 1% left, or you wouldn't know what that means. You don't know what this is. This is my girlfriend. Right. And the kid's like, well, here's the thing. The kid's like 12, right?
Yeah, he has no idea technology.
Literally, physically, he's not a man yet. So he's starting to get into that realm. And he's like, what happened to her face? Because she had like a lip job and bow tie.
Yeah, and all that. He's like,
what are you talking about, me?
And I think he's like, oh, it's like the one girl in our village. She gets food allergies. Her face swells up. He's like, no, yeah,
it was kind of funny.
he just throws his because he had no signal everywhere, anyway, so he couldn't contact anybody. So he just threw it after it died, he threw it on the ground. But and they kind of like just talked about a little bit of technology and stuff. He's like, there's these kids like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because he originally he came across them while his mom Spike and his mom were being chased by the infected. They went to this like gas station.
Yep.
And there's, I guess, the benzamine, what it's called, gas cloud was inside there.
So you and I have never gone into it, but gasoline. Obviously, you're fine petroleum, but what happens to gasoline?
Gasoline eventually turns back to a gas form.
So it breaks off as a gas. Yeah. Benzene, I think it was.
Yeah, benzene. Yeah. And it was, so they're in there, they're coughing, and he basically tells them to get down. And this is, I'll say this suspend your belief, because he shoots in there and lights the flame and the gas above them. He's got a giant firewall, goes around everything, burns everything that's standing up. Them on the ground, they're fine. They come out, and this is okay. I know how do I rank this compared to the first movie? The first movie had the best fireball with the guy with the explosives. This was okay, but
the overhead shots of them having a cross and then the water's fantastic.
Yeah.
The scenes in the fields are tremendous.
Yep.
What a great use of nature in here too, to show them and all that. And it was quite stunning visually. He's just got a great eye. The beach was like this too.
So I'm surprised the rage virus isn't carried by the birds, because we've seen this before with other movies where by like the zombie stuff, with Resident Evil, the birds get infected and they carry stuff. Even with this, because crows eat corpses and stuff, I figured they would have maybe came over to their village or whatever, and maybe gotten stuff their poop or bird poop, whatever, You think that
something that acts very fast goes through a population, so you can kind of like lock yourself out and not get it, right? But if something goes slow, it can take its time or whatever, and then it can be contagious that way. So some will jump from animal to human or vice versa, and the directions aren't always the same. Like if you think it goes from human to animal, that doesn't mean it can go from animal to human.
Well, the other thing is, like, where are the rest of the animals? There had to be some predators. They have to have bears over in Britain. I'd be surprised if they don't.
Well, yeah, because things would get out of whack in nature, right? We've talked about this before with some stuff. When animals attack movies, the message in the 70s, subtly speaking, was that man fucked up nature, so nature's going to get revenge on your ass. It's stupid, but it was always fun to see like a bear go killer on your ass, or a bunch of piranha or something.
And these are just a bunch of this. All they do is bite. They don't have tools or whatever and stuff. So a grizzly bear going after them would have just torn them apart, and you would have to see Alpha go after the rest of the bear, something like that.
So 128 days later, zombies, or 28 years later, zombies, or one silverback gorilla.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think, and then 120 years from now, this is before we learn that they can procreate. I would have thought they would have been dead by now. They would have burned out, but now we know that they can procreate. Yeah. Well, because
that was the most interesting. We got to admit,
so
the pregnant zombie, was she pregnant and then became a zombie, and then the baby she gained? That was the whole point. Is this kid's a vessel, and they've got a baby that really tie them down.
And then I said,
deliver the friggin' baby out of the zombie. Yeah, that's cool.
So the doctor,
see the baby coming out of her.
Yeah. So the doctor hypothesized, he didn't really know it to be true, but apparently the placenta is a miracle thing, and it prevents the virus from coming passed on from the mother into the child.
Yes. Yes.
But he's also amazed the fact that he can procreate and stuff. He's been studying them, kind of like a nature channel for them. He's been having all these years. He knows how to take them down. Obviously with the morphine, the bull dart stuff. But he's like, I'm surprised he wasn't tagging it, because he knows this one's Alpha. He said, like, the disease affects people differently. Some got steroids, super strong. We call those alphas. Other ones became betas. And obviously, as nature, there always has to be a leader of a pack. So there was no wolves. So I don't know if the wolves or any stuff got killed too and stuff. We don't know. It's been 28 years.
Yeah.
What's been eaten? But eventually, you think these things would run out of food source, and die, because they like conventional means of trading from other countries.
No, you're absolutely right. In an isolated environment like they were at, you have a pretty much limited accessible food supply, because not forget that it gets cold there for a very long period of time. So how are they able to do with that mechanically? If they're running in their bare feet at full speed, and they're going to break something, it's not going to heal back, right? There should be a lot more deformed ones.
What I wanted was Peninsula. Remember Train to Busan 2? Mm-hmm. How they went into the infected country. I want the perspective of the people who are on the naval ships, the ones who are not part of Britain. And I want to see what they're up to and stuff. Do
you think we're going to get that?
I don't know. I'm going to say no, because that would just be too much. Like I said, I like having an open world thing, because obviously we were led to believe that this went in the first movie went across other countries. It was already in the United States, and outbreaks and stuff. So it feels like we're getting a soft reboot. That's my take, because it's a trilogy, so we're getting a soft reboot. It's still the same writer,
yes,
and the same director. And they're ignoring the events of the second movie because it wasn't directed by Danny Boyle. So even technically this is the third. It feels more like 28 days, rebooted. So overall, though, my thing I didn't like as much. Because it became about the kid taking his mom to go see the doctor and having to survive along the way, and then to me that was boring. I've seen that. I don't need to see that.
The first one, though, isn't it?
So the first one, the first one, he wakes up. He has no idea what's going on for 30 minutes. It's empty, And then the music kept going louder and louder and speeding up and finally he comes across the church, says the end is fucking 9 on there, and Britain and blood all there, and it's so quiet there. He's walking up and you see the pounding on the doors, and then the priest comes out and he's like, and he cuts Jack. He's like, then he is being chased out of there. All the infected chasing him. He comes across the 2 survivors who plant a bomb and basically blow up the infected, killing them with the fire and everything.
To me, it's the same story.
No, to me, it's way different.
It's not. It's this guy wakes up, and what was he? He was a bike courier. He was basically a nobody. He was basically a young boy that just at an advanced age, or in his late teens, early 20s.
He was much older.
Trying to become a father figure, which he was. You could argue he was able to do at the end of the first film. That's what this kid is doing. It's just been spread out now because we're going to have a trilogy.
I disagree. The first movie was way different than this one.
The way it was presented may have been different, but again, very early on when the person's starting to become aware of their surroundings, they discount the importance of religion.
This kid grew up.
In both films.
This kid grew up with the knowledge of the infected and all that stuff, whereas the main guy in the first movie had not acknowledged whatsoever. And he's going through disbelief. You wake up and your life's over. All of a sudden, like it's apocalypse. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know if he's dead or whatever. Well,
I think you're looking at it as a disaster, kind of almost action story.
It kind of was. The first one was
a lot more of that stuff in it, but I would not argue that with you. Yes. That's absolutely true.
This felt like it's just like, let's make a Maze Runner story, aimed for little kids. This it didn't seem like it was really aimed for adults. It's more like aimed for like teenagers.
And it's interesting you're saying that because we're kind of disagreeing a little bit on that. But why do you say that? I think that's an interesting take.
Because the first movie felt more adult, more it treated the audience,
didn't have
better.
kids in it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
Seriously.
Here's the thing about kids. Kids always get people killed in every apocalyptic movie. The kids are a nuisance, they're annoying. And in the first movie, we didn't really have the kid. You could say that maybe Cillian Murphy was a kid because he was like, what? So because but in this kid is 12 years old. He knows right from wrong. He knows what to do, and because he's caught his dad banging some other chick. He was drunk, and he basically tries to attack his dad with his knife outside of their mom's room. And I'm thinking there's the dad grabs the knife from him, and he shakily does the right thing and returns the knife back to the kid. Instead of he could have, because he already smacked the kid once. If anything, that kid needed to be disciplined more.
The kid was hurt. He was afraid, and his father knew exactly why.
Because he saw his dad cheating on his mom, and so what does he do? Well, I'm going to take my mom out there, and even his mom was like, "Where's Dad? Why are we out here?" She's still somewhat cognitive, she was wearing out, but he basically just kind of got them both killed, or he could have let the infected back into the actual place where they are.
And why would he do that?
Because he's a kid. Kids are stupid.
This kid's not stupid. He's
All
got a
kids
moral
are
compass.
stupid. All kids are stupid. And they don't have
stupid or inexperienced.
Same thing. He doesn't have this.
Totally
different. He's stupid and does not have street smarts.
Street smarts is not intelligence. It has to do with
street smarts is what you learn by people showing you.
Correct.
Yes, and he had
none of that. That's not intelligence, though. How quickly?
And when I say stupidity, he thinks he knows everything. So that's why he's going to do what he wants.
I don't think he acts that way at all, though.
No.
He just knows do this and do this.
Well, he reacted to his dad. It doesn't know the full story. Instead of talking it out with his dad, he makes assumptions and decides to take his mom out there and figure like, oh, I can go to this doctor, And even though after you've been told that this doctor was crazy,
Well, he can't believe that because he can't trust his dad. He's hurt.
But his dad didn't say that though. That was Sam,
family,
friend,
right?
That was Sam, who's never lied to him before.
Just saying.
So
no, it's an interesting conversation because a part of me, with what you're saying, I go, is he really making the same story? Because the beach with Leo DiCaprio, people are like, I don't get it. The guy hangs out at the beach and he screws some people and then he comes back. It's about what happens and things break down. And at the beach, he ended up becoming the alpha there by going through these different things. And he was thought of as basically being the head chief at one point. And then he just realized, hey, I got caught up in some shit that I shouldn't have been. And it's going from this primal, like Lord of the Rings kind of thing back to regular society. And Boyle, for some reason, puts that kind of setup, like you're saying in the first movie. Yeah, there's definitely some differences to it. And in this one, and I would totally agree with you. The first one seems more adult-like than this one. Because of the kid and all that, I definitely agree. I'm simply saying the structure of it, to me, looks like it's the same story. It's not a bad thing, but I think it's pretty obvious now.
It feels like a Disney movie, but a kid going on an adventure, and then at the end of the movie, after his kids, he comes across these other kids, the Lost Boys.
Stop the Lost Boys.
So they call Jimmy's, and they're gonna work. They're gonna follow him, and maybe he'll become the new leader and stuff, Or maybe it'll be Oliver Twist, Oliver Twist movie, and they'll be the kids. They're gonna pick on them. We don't know. But this movie did win some trailers. I never. Do you ever heard of Golden Trailer Awards?
Never.
Came on. They started as American tradition. Started in 1999, and they were a nominee for best horror. This was 20 years later. It won.
Okay.
And it also, it won the most original trailer. Best of show, was a winner from the Don Fontaine Award of Best Voiceover and the Golden Trailer Award.
He was the voiceover king back in the day.
Yeah, and it also won the Best Sound Editing. So this, I'd never heard of that before. Apparently, that's a thing that they do. They've been doing it. They were part of the nominees, and they won 3 out or 5 out of 4 or 3 out of 4, awards. So it was interesting because I'd never known of that. I've heard of the what was it called, SAFTA or BAFTA, what it's called?
BAFTA, yeah.
But Oscars and all that stuff. But I'd never heard of this before. Trailer, But anyway, though, like I said, if you're expecting Aaron Johnson to be badass in this movie, he's hardly in it.
The less Aaron Taylor Johnson, the better. Would we agree?
You know what? I've said this before. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I felt like he was done dirty in this. Like he should have got a bigger role instead of this being like a dad, who the kid can't trust, so he has to leave the dad behind, and
maybe it's a redemption arc for the second and third film.
Well, if he's in it, we don't know.
No, you're right. I agree.
Yeah, because my thing is the worst thing you can do is have a character like that, screw him or make him be like a bad father, and then he never gets a chance to redeem himself. So
yeah, I'm with you on that, and your radar is very attuned to the lack of fathers in films.
And here's the thing, though. Here's the other problem. Alpha's still around, so is Alpha going to be a problem? The main bad guy in the second movie?
It does feel like he's going to be a character, doesn't he?
Yes, because remember he was mad because they killed his wife. That's why he killed the Swedish soldier. Ripped his neck out because they killed his wife, the pregnant wife. That was his lover. The one they killed, and he wants his baby. So I think at the end we did see one of them. I guess was up by was it the monster or was it the kid up at the cliff of the rocks? So they should keep showing him, because I wouldn't be surprised if Alpha, they know where the thing is, and they just decided to take over, and destroy the village because of the kid.
I'll close with this. I think it's a decent film to watch. If you've seen several of his films, I think it'll seem familiar to you. There's, I think, different ways that you can put it on there. I don't pretend to understand how deep Danny Boyle tries to be in his films. I definitely feel like he's trying to do something. It is a bit distressing that it seems like, like I mentioned, The Beach, which I like because it's a vibe, and then these two films all feel like they're the same in their own way. I think your description sounds like dumbing it down, calling it a Disney movie with kids. I cannot argue that. Yeah,
there's also one thing we forgot left out. When him and his father originally went out, they came around this hut to hide in because it's been 4 hours. They wanted to hide out, so they get chased into where this house is, and they have to make it into the attic, the loft thing, and they spend the night in there. This is where they learn about the fire. But before that, inside the house, they came across a body hanging there, and it had the name Jimmy carved in it. So Jimmy's gonna be a bad guy now? They go, who is this kid? They saved him, but maybe they want supplies, and as this kid comes from a village nearby, Maybe they're the bad people, or maybe they're one of the bad people. Because that's the thing about zombie movies. You can say this isn't a zombie movie. It's the crazies in Britain, whatever, British version of that. You're gonna have two villains. One is the threat of the infected, and then one's gonna be a person.
Yeah, it does seem like it's going to come down to that, doesn't it?
That's what Walking Dead turned into. And all these movies always turn into that. Dawn of the Dead, The Mall, turned into that because you had their conflict, and then the bikers' conflict at the mall caused them, the collapse. I'm sure I haven't seen Day of the Dead, no one in the Asylum, but I'm sure that's the same thing, it's always someone has to screw something up for the other person. And because what's the common message? We are monsters. Humans are the threat.
Oh, I hope it doesn't turn into that.
Yeah.
Man, your argument is starting to grow strong all of a sudden, sir. I'm serious. It's
because his dad was a monster. What he did to the kid. But no, seriously, everybody, guys. Even though I didn't like it, Rob liked it more than I did. Apparently, a lot of people went and saw it. So I don't know if they liked it or they just saw it because, hey, we love the first movie. Let's go watch this. It's been a while. We've had a Danny Boyle.
I was excited because he does a great job of his vision, and I like the look of what he does. Some of those scenes we talked about endlessly with the first movie are great individual shots.
Yep.
The light from really far in the distance. You get a great sense of that no matter how much he does it. Today's CGI and everything, it doesn't feel that way when you see it. I'll be honest, it doesn't. I tried to give it a chance. It doesn't.
It's labeled as zombie horror thriller. That's what they call it.
A horror movie to me.
Yeah,
it's not.
It's apocalyptic. It's I wouldn't say dystopian, but I mean it's basically it's a movie after the world ends, and then in survival. And like I said, it's honestly, I hope you guys go and watch this and let us know what you think of it, because I wanted to watch it just like Rob because it's Danny Boyle returning 28 days later, 20 years later. I watched the second one. Second one with Jeremy Renner was dull. It was okay, but it had nothing to do with the first movie. There was no connection whatsoever other than just being like, oh, it's 28 weeks later. Okay, where's Cecilian Murphy? Where's the rest of the stuff? Because I thought we had a handle on this. I thought we got survivors, but and so this movie was Danny Boyle come back to BSC, and it's this. They build this as the sequel to 28 Days Later. They're skipping that 28 weeks later, even though it came out, because it was Danny Boyle's story. He didn't direct it. So I think that's why a lot of people went to the theaters to go watch it, and it's remember it just came out on the 19th, so you're gonna see this movie make a lot more money. Now it's been out only for a week, because they said the budget was $60 million. It's already made $103 million. It's they made their $60 million back plus some more. But if you think about it, they got to make $120 million.
They'll get made because of his name and because they've already kind of done it, right?
And also,
go ahead.
I want to point out this is also Sony too.
What does that mean? Why are you saying that?
No, because Sony's been putting out the bad movies, like the superhero movies lately. A lot of bombs. Every time they do it. Anytime Sony attaches their name to something, usually the movie doesn't do well. It's been kind of that way, and so
I'll say this about him. He this is the last thing. It's just when I say all these are kind of like the same story, sometimes people have a story in mind, and then they just fit anything into it, right?
Yeah.
And when a writer or director kind of does it, it's their vision. Okay.
Yep.
So that's fine. So we go, oh, it's a Tarantino film, which you and I reviewed so many old martial arts films. Here we go. Yeah, Kill Bill's just a ripoff. It's derivative. I'm not saying it's not done well.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. There's nothing original in it, right? So to me, I think he keeps telling his same story over and over in different avenues. I don't think there's much of a difference between them. And I think some people, like you and I, really wish there'd be more movies that have a strong fatherly figure in it, and we don't get them. So when it's shit on in here, it's obvious, right? So we look for certain things that we bring when we're watching a film that we go, well, it should be about the story. If the father was here, he shouldn't do that because of this or that. Well, we don't know that much about him. We just kind of see a few things, and that's what happens. But it seems like Danny keeps doing the same thing, where his films, even though they look great, I I get kind of torn because I go, is he just flashy and it just looks good? And a part of me goes, man, I really love the visually watching it.
Yeah.
But what was the story about? And I always say story is important. And you and I like to say, well, we got to have a character, or I usually say to kind of emotionally attach to. Unless this kid sells it for you, it might be a tough watch.
Yeah.
So I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
I'm just anti-kid B-led movies. I don't want to watch Valeria and all that stuff. I'm glad they kept their, rated R and stuff, gore and stuff in here too. But I said, like,
you don't like juvenile stuff that's supposed to be more adult-like.
Yeah, I don't. Like I said, I don't want the kid being the main character. Unless the kid's growing up, and now we're seeing like the Jimmy. I cared more about Jimmy. After it's all these years later. I'm like, okay, it's been all these 28 years later, whatever, since Jimmy. I'm more interested in what's going on with Jimmy. He came back at the end. And I learned where it was. When they filmed that, it was actually in Cheddar Gorge, which is in Somerset in southwest England. Mm-hmm. Beautiful place, hills and everything, the rocks up, and it's a nice if you had a motorcycle or car to go cruising for. Beautiful scenery, but I don't really care for. I don't need Spike's story. Okay, let's Spike. You're cool. You're a little kid now coming on. Jimmy's like, all right, kid, go away, go play. It's like Jimmy's return. I want parkour boys.
I'm withholding saying stuff about that till we do the next film, sir.
The only thing that made me kind of like cringe a little bit is that the cast of one of the Jimmys is if those who watch the MCU stuff, you watch like the Winter Soldier and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show, the main bad girl in there who was like a what do you call it? She was I forget what her name is, but she was one of the terrorists. Mm-hmm. I want to see if they list her name right here in the cast, but her name is Erin Kellyman. She plays one of the Jimmys in here. The last time I saw her, Rob, was in Willow, the TV series.
Okay.
Yeah. It seems like she comes in and she's getting all these kind of like obscure roles, and so every time she's in there, she's always like the antagonist, the one you just don't want around in her. So I'm like,
go away,
go away, So I'm just curious to say, like, she's one of the Jimmys. I'm just curious, like, will that bring down the movie for me as well, the second movie?
All I'll say is if people do a deep dive in the Jimmy thing and all that, there's I don't know if Danny Boyle's trying to be cute or throw a lot of shit on Hollywood with the whole issue they have with children. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, Jimmy Savile, accused of allegations. Yep.
So.
Yep. So that's what I call the Jimmys. So I was like, oh, is this like the King kids? The main character is a young kid, and the grown-ups are now called Jimmys.
He's getting groomed.
Well, they're the bad guys.
That's
I said. Are the Jimmys supposed to be the bad guys in the movie at the end here?
We'll find out.
Like I said, like, hey, we'll save you. Need help? Sure. They help them, and then they're like, now we need something from you.
And there's always one in any of these apocalyptic movies.
I don't think you'll get them molested, but I think that you're gonna like be like, hey, yeah, you want to be one of us? Cool. And the kid's like, yeah, you guys are kind of cool. And then you're like, where's your village, Jimmy, or new Jimmy or Spike? Like, because I think that was a warning, because his dad said that when they found the guy carved the Jimmy in there. We don't know.
I'm sure on all their raids when they're taking out zombies, they've kept a healthy supply behind at their main base of Jimmy oil.
Well, I'm going to say this. Here's my theory. The guy that's in the house, that Spike and his father came across, his son was infected. But I think when they left him there, he wasn't infected. He betrayed Jimmy, or they robbed that place, or betrayed him, and they did that to him as a punishment. So I actually believe that these guys are going to be the villains in the next movie, the Jimmys.
Interesting.
They're the ones that go after. They're the saviors. They're the Walking Dead. They're the Negans that go and take other people's supplies and kill them.
Yeah.
So that's my theory. But I guess we'll end it right here. I mean, honestly, it's only the beginning of a 3-part trilogy. It seems it's doing pretty well. My only gripe is that trilogies usually get worse as they go on from the first movie. So hopefully that's not the case here, because that was really gonna suck. But if you guys could leave a like button, hit that like button, smash it. Also check out our our comment section down below after the stream. Leave a comment. Let us know that you were here, and let us know what you thought of that movie. And if you have any movie suggestions, or kind of like 28 days later or 20 years later, if you want us to check out, if we haven't done so, let us know too. Also, hit the subscribe button. If you're not subscribed, but you're watching here, it's kind of redundant. But we got a lot of cool content in here, and there's a lot of stuff they're probably going to redo anyway. We did 3 years ago. We always do that with movies, so because we watch it, get a new take. Obviously we reviewed 28 years later twice now. Last Tuesday was the second time since like 3 years. So I think we'll probably maybe we'll go into 28 weeks later if you want to. I don't know. But
we'll talk about that. I'll just say that Tuesday night when we go live 8:00 Eastern, one thing we tried out with you guys that had some success was hit or miss. Some were really awesome, the amount of responses we got when we put polls up. Sometimes we put movies that we want. So if you leave a comment below on any movies that you want that's there, that's another way of communicating with us, letting us know. Obviously, you can reach out too. And one last comment is I just want to say I appreciate to those of you that, especially some of the newer people. I don't have nearly the amount of followers that you do on Twitter and all that. I'm not very active on it, but I've had a few people retweet some of our links out to the shows and all that. So getting people to come in and do it. And it's always great when I look at the content and the stats and I see older stuff, all of a sudden people listening to, like right now, somebody's getting about 10 people are about halfway through going through Wayward Pines of all television shows, right? And Columbo's usually pretty solid. So we just dropped an episode there. So I'll see all you guys Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern live.
All right. Later, guys.
Good night now.